hell is always giving the microphone to the stupid people? That guy's gotta be stopped. Oh, hello, Super Horror family and guest. Hundreds of years ago, the USA became free from the world-leading superpower, Britain. Sadly, becoming free from stupidity is taking much longer. So for today's creepy content, we're going to look at some of my favorite true scary stories that were published in real newspapers from over 100 years ago. There'll be a haunted school, a cop shooting at a ghost. Of course that happened in Chicago, and 2 others that I enjoy. So settle in, and remember, no matter how crazy things look today, it could be worse. The people in these stories did not have indoor plumbing.
The stories in this video are not stories at all, but articles. Articles about paranormal events that were published in real newspapers 100 years ago. It is rare to see anything official come as the direct result of a haunting, but that is exactly what happened in Carroll County, Indiana. Carroll County, Indiana will be having a new schoolhouse built because its current schoolhouse is being haunted by the ghost of a murderer. Several years ago, Amer Green was lynched by a mob for murdering Luella Mabbitt. It came as a shock to all, as Amer appeared quite enamored with the young woman, and she him. Once caught, the mob dragged him to a tree in the Walnut Grove schoolyard to be hung. Since then, the children have been filled with superstitious terror. Many parents are also uncomfortable with the event, and as a direct result, many were not sending their children to school. The children, however, were not the only ones affected. The teachers in the school also reported hearing sounds around the building that could not be accounted for. Maybe one of the strangest occurrences is the tree itself. Its leaves never came back after the lynching. It just stands there, a reminder of a terrible event in Walnut Grove. Trustee Jesse Martin of Jackson Township has given a contract for the building of a new school for Walnut Grove because of the hauntings. Every place gets its fair share of crazy people. No matter where you are, there'll be someone there to tell you about all the strange sights and sounds they've experienced. The neighborhood of Hyde Park in Chicago is no exception. Only this time, the reports are not coming from local drunks, but from law enforcement. It started a long time ago, with people living on State Street between 45th and 49th Street, claiming they would see an apparition walking through the neighborhood at midnight, on all fours. At first, these accounts were considered to be the product of alcohol. We've all seen a man walk home on all fours when he's had too much to drink, and it being so late, and people observing from their windows, it's easy to see how a mistake could be made. But soon after, reports began coming in from streetcar drivers, 2 of which have refused to work their shifts after seeing the ghost. After these reports reached Captain Hunt, he increased midnight patrols in the area, instructing his officers to apprehend the person responsible for the hauntings. When the ghost appeared, he was immediately pursued by a Hyde Park policeman. The officer ran after it, and even fired his revolver several times. When the ghost reached the Grand Boulevard, it suddenly vanished. Several officers have now been detailed to hide and wait for the ghost to appear, with the hope of being able to ambush it. There's a 100-year-old farmhouse, the old Hammett Homestead, situated near the boundary line of Wareham and Middleborough, Massachusetts. In its 100 years, it has been the scene of 2 known murders, though now people are suspecting the number might be much higher than that. The last recorded murder was the tragic murder of a little girl. She was found beheaded in the house's cellar. No arrests were made. It was a terrible mystery that was never solved, and everyone forgot about, until 3 weeks ago. Some school children were on their way home when they saw a girl run out of the old farmhouse screaming. She was immediately followed by a tall, shadowy man who grabbed her and started pulling her towards the house. The girl resisted, so the man hit her on the head and dragged her body inside. The children were frozen in place watching. They watched until the man dragged the girl to a part of the house that couldn't be seen from the windows. Then a loud sound was heard, followed by the sound of many screaming women. This screaming snapped the children out of their trance and sent them all running for home. The next night, 8 young men met up in the woods bordering the house of the alleged sightings to investigate. From their position in the woods, the men could see both men and women frantically walking past the windows, and unearthly shrieks could be heard. Then, as quickly as it started, it all stopped. The light, the shrieks, and the frantic movement, all gone. A half an hour the men waited and saw nothing going on in the old house. After half an hour, the house was again illuminated. This time, the 8 men, suspecting this was some sort of trick or prank, ran towards the farmhouse. But as they got closer, the light, the sounds, and the people would vanish. At this point, one of the men abandoned the other 7 and ran to the village. When he arrived, he was carrying on about what he saw and passed out. The other men didn't see anything else, so they returned to the village and confirmed everything the first man had said happened. 2 nights later, a man and his family were passing by the house while on the way to New Bedford. The house appeared to be on fire. The horses were so frightened, they started running and wouldn't stop until they were a quarter mile away. The horses refused to turn around, so the man went on foot to see what was wrong. The road he was on was curved, so he decided to walk through a small wooded area to save some time. While walking through the wooded patch, he lost sight of the house for a moment and could not find it again, even when out of the woods in front of where the house was. The man was confused by this and continued to New Bedford, where he told people what had happened. With the news of the haunting spreading, some well-known professional spiritualists went to visit the property. While they didn't see anything, they reported hearing female voices, sometimes singing, sometimes screaming, and a deep pounding sound like a bass drum. A gentleman named William R. Luce, who lives near the Middleborough line, has also come forward about the paranormal activity at the old farmhouse. He says that while passing by one evening, he noticed the lights from inside the house. He was worried the abandoned property was being used by thieves and degenerates, and stopped his horse. He could see through the window a group of women moving frantically up the stairs. Then a series of screams and thuds, as one of the women appeared to be thrown down the steps. Mr. Luce ran over to investigate, but as he approached, the lights dimmed. The people faded, and the house stood there abandoned. The owner of the property, Mr. Gibbs, is now petitioned daily to tear down the place. Some locals are worried that someone will take matters into their own hands and burn it down themselves. What was at one point considered by everyone to be a childish prank is now being taken very seriously after all of these sightings. There has been a reported ghost sighting at Prospect Hill Cemetery. Mr. H.P. Stanwood, the well-known sculptor, has a small house and marble cutting shop bordering the cemetery. Mr. Stanwood employs a few people at his shop. 2 of them, a pair of brothers, were given permission to sleep in the shop. On Tuesday night, one of the brothers went outside to take in the air one last time before going to sleep. It was quiet. It was always quiet at night at the cemetery. His eyes scanned over the horizon when he saw what he first thought was a vision, or a reflection of sorts. But as it got closer to him, its shape became more and more defined. It was a woman in white. A ghost. He ran inside and pulled his brother out to see it. By the time they came out, the ghost was very close, so they ran back inside and out the back door, just as the ghost made it into the shop and blew out the light. The brothers ran to Mr. Stanwood's house and told him about the ghost. The three men went out to see what was going on. They didn't have to go very far, as the ghost was still following the brothers. The ghost hit Mr. Stanwood and asked him about where her children were buried. Before he could answer, the ghost went into his house and entered into a bedroom occupied by another person employed by Mr. Stanwood. The employee was so scared, he fled through a window. Mr. Stanwood and the brothers watched as the other employee fled. One brother pulled out his revolver and fired 2 shots at the ghost. But it didn't matter. Then, for an unknown reason, the ghost made its way back to the cemetery and disappeared. The next night, she appeared again. Before she even began approaching the brothers, the 2 men ran into town and stood there for the night.
Well, that's it for this video. I need to get out of here. A really big name in horror signed up to use this room in a few minutes. The United States government! While they're thinking up new ways to give our money to their donors, you need to see my video on the real hauntings of the US Capitol. It's a fun one. Click here. Until next time, you do matter, and no matter where you are, stay free, Super Horror family.